The law was harsh: kill her warlord, claim her body. He did both. The atmosphere on Veronis, a copper-stained moon orbiting a fading giant, was thick with metallic tang and old wounds. Marcus woke to the constant hum of the research outpost, fans straining against the weight of the planet's ancient air, the rhythmic pulse of power cores reverberating through the reinforced floors. He rubbed his eyes, the grit of sleeplessness caught in the creases of his palms, and peered through the panoramic glass at the Azurian enclave nestled in the jagged cliffs beyond. The enclave was no mere village. A labyrinth of chitin and hide clung to the precipices, its walls jutting like the carapace of some prehistoric beast. Smoke curled from vents hidden in the shadows, and between the spires, Azurians glided with predatory grace, tall, sinewy figures whose twilight blue skin caught the dusklight, their eyes twin lanterns burning with unspoken secrets. Marcus should have been cataloging the planet's flora, the tough, copper-veined plants that clung to life in the mineral-laden soil. Instead, his gaze drifted, always, to the Azurians. They moved as a pack, yet each held a wildness, a danger. He watched them through the glass, transfixed and uneasy. Among them, Syrah stood apart. She moved with athletic certainty, her long pink hair a vivid banner that marked her even in the crowd. Armor, molded to her form, glinted beneath the shadows of the cliff. Her pointed ears twitched with every distant sound. Syrah carried herself with attention, shoulders squared, chin lifted, as though ready to spring. Her eyes flickered with something fierce, something caged. Marcus saw it each time Dravik emerged. The warlord's presence was a thunderclap. He was massive, armored in the scaled hide of some native beast, every gesture promising violence. Marcus flinched as Dravik's fist cracked down on a subordinate. No words, only pain, meted out for all to witness. The clan recoiled, fear scenting the air. No one challenged him. When Dravik seized Syrah's arm, his grip was possessive, harsh. She endured, jaw set, rage burning beneath her luminous gaze. A voice broke the silence behind Marcus. "Don't get involved, Marcus. Their customs aren't ours to judge." Lieutenant Hale, the outpost chief, joined him at the window. Her uniform was rumpled, face drawn by too many nights of unrest. Marcus's jaw clenched. Observation isn't the same as turning a blind eye. Hale sighed, the sound heavy with weariness. They respect strength. We're tolerated, nothing more. Don't give them a reason to see us as weak. Maybe strength isn't what they need, Marcus muttered. But Hale had already turned away, her reflection fading in the glass. Later, the copper sky glowering above, Marcus trekked the edge of the cliffs. He moved with practiced care, collecting thornfruit roots and scraping samples of the peculiar lichen that coated the rocks. A flicker of movement caught his eye. Syrah, alone, crouched among the glass thorns, hands deft as she unearthed tubers. Her armor was battered, her skin bruised at the jaw, the mark fresh. A sharp clatter broke the hush. Her battered communicator slipped from her belt and tumbled into a dense patch of glass thorns. Syrah cursed softly in her own tongue, biting her lip, wary of the needle-like spines. Instinct overrode caution. Marcus approached, careful not to startle her. He knelt at the patch's edge, withdrew his forceps from his kit, and plucked the communicator free with surgical precision. He extended it to her. Their fingers brushed, her skin cool, almost electric, the sensation sending a jolt up his arm. Syrah's eyes widened, pupils flaring silver. The moment stretched, fragile as spun glass. A roar shattered it. "You taint my mate with your weak flesh, off-worlder!" Dravik's voice thundered as he strode toward them, warriors at his heels. The clan spilled from the shadows, closing in with predatory glee. Marcus raised his hands, communicator still between his fingers. "I was only returning her device." Dravik sneered, nostrils flaring. "You insult us. You claim she is frail, that I am unfit. The law is clear. A murmur rippled through the clan. The right of iron dust. Words that needed no translation. Syrah's gaze darted to Marcus, lips parted in warning. Marcus glimpsed the bruise on her cheek, the expectant silence of the warriors. He understood. Refusal meant exile. No one survived alone on Veronis. I accept, he said, voice steadier than he felt. They dragged him to a crude forge, little more than a wind-shielded alcove lined with battered tools. He was allowed no weapons save what he could find or fashion. While the Azurian smiths stoked their sacred fire for Dravik's armor, Marcus turned to what he knew best. He scavenged a cluster of pale, spore-dusted fungi from the arena's edge. Paralytic, he remembered from his notes. Toxic enough to slow the heart if it entered the bloodstream. He ground the flesh with a broken vial, lacing the edge of his trowel. He studied the dueling grounds. The arena was a half-circle of packed dust and treacherous pits. There, a sinkhole, the earth crumbling beneath a veil of loose gravel. He marked its edge with a glance, mind whirring with strategies born of desperation. Syrah appeared as dusk fell, standing in the shadows beyond the firelight. Warriors stripped her of her blades, binding her arms. Her eyes found Marcus, unreadable. Anger, fear, something else flickering in their depths. He nodded to her, silent promise in the gesture. The drums began. Azurian elders filed to the stone ring, horn raised. The clan jeered, voices astorm. Dravik entered, a juggernaut clad in battered armor, his blade a shard of night. Marcus stepped forward, bare save for his botanist's trowel. Laughter rippled through the crowd. The horn blared. Dravik attacked with a roar, blade whistling. Marcus ducked, rolling aside, sweat stinging his eyes. Dravik pressed, a barrage of blows, each strike carving gouges in the earth. Marcus kept moving, feinting toward the sinkhole, the trowel gripped tight. A chance. Dravik overextended, and Marcus slashed his forearm. A shallow cut, but the toxin would do its work. Dravik bellowed, swinging wildly. Marcus retreated, drawing him nearer to the unstable ground. Dravik's breath came heavier, his steps slowing, muscles twitching. The crowd sensed it, jeers fading into murmurs. Marcus lured him to the sinkhole's edge. Dravik lunged. The ground gave way with a sudden, sucking roar. He crashed down, legs pinned, arms flailing. Marcus stood over him, vision narrowed to a single point. Dravik's eyes met his, rage melting into fear. With grim resolve, Marcus ended it, swift, merciful. The silence was absolute. The elder stepped forward, voice echoing in the hush. By right of iron dust, Marcus claims Dravik's mantle. All that was his is now yours. The warriors recoiled. Syrah was stripped of her bonds, blades taken, and brought before Marcus. She stood stiff, eyes burning, expecting humiliation. Instead, Marcus shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders, shielding her from the eyes of the clan. We'll talk at dawn, he told the elder, voice steady. He led Syrah away from the ring of hostile faces, into the warlord's quarters, stone, hide, and cold silence. Inside, Marcus gestured to the bed. It's yours. I'll take the floor. Syrah's voice was a lash. You think you've saved us? Dravik was our shield. You've doomed us. Marcus sat in the gloom, the weight of her words settling on his shoulders. He realized he'd inherited not just a mate, but a looming conflict, one that no amount of science could solve before dawn. Night pressed in, thick and restless, the air in the warlord's quarters heavy with the aftertaste of violence and uncertainty. Marcus lay on his thin mat, every muscle taut beneath the battered fabric. Syrah's warning echoed in the dark. Armored night stalkers from the wastes were coming. Dravik's brutality, for all its ugliness, had been their only shield. Marcus stared at the cracked ceiling. How many? He asked softly, his voice barely stirring the silence. Sira sat rigid on the edge of the warlord's bed, legs tucked beneath her, eyes fixed on the wall as if watching ghosts. Her armor gleamed dully in the half-light, pink hair falling like a curtain over her shoulder. "You think I count them?" she snapped, voice sharper than her blade. "They do not come by numbers. They come by hunger, by scent." She tilted her head, regarding him with a cold, wary pride. "If you had known, would you have fought Dravik?" Marcus hesitated, unwilling to offer her platitudes. "I couldn't let him keep hurting you." "Or anyone." A bitter laugh. "You know nothing. His cruelty kept the clans together, kept the Night Stalkers out." She turned away, lips pressed thin. "You broke the shield. Now we wait for the storm." He pushed for answers, quiet but insistent. "What are they? The Night Stalkers? How do they hunt?" Sira's fingers tightened around the hilt of a hidden knife. "You're the warlord. You should know." He met her gaze. "I'm not your enemy, Sira. I want to help." She scoffed, but something in his steady tone, his refusal to match her anger with his own, seemed to catch her off guard. The silence stretched, broken only by the distant clangor of a sentry's bell, the deep throb of the outpost's generator. Days passed, each one stitched together by tension and unspoken questions. Marcus moved carefully, never crossing the invisible boundary Sira had drawn between them. He slept on the mat, body curled away from her, making no attempt to touch or command. He washed with cold water, ate the hard bread and bitter roots of the Azurian larder, always mindful of her presence. Sira tested him, sometimes with words, barbed and cruel, sometimes with actions. Once, she left a blade hidden beneath his pillow. Another time, she fainted at him in the corridor, lightning fast, blade glinting. He disarmed her gently, never retaliating, never gloating. One evening, as he patched a tear in his sleeve, she entered the room, tossing a curved knife onto the floor at his feet. "You know our tongue," she said, watching his hands. Marcus kept his eyes on the needle. "Better than most Outworlders. I made sure to learn." He replied in fluent Azurian, his accent rough but clear. "Your words have teeth. I listen." A flicker of surprise, quickly masked. "You listen, but do you understand?" she challenged. "I try," he said simply, meeting her gaze. "That's all any of us can do." Sira huffed, but for the first time, the wall between them did not feel insurmountable. Beyond their quarters, the clan watched him with open scorn. Warriors glared as he passed, their eyes full of derision. Marcus could feel their contempt. A trickster, they believed. A soft-fleshed off-worlder who had stolen power through deceit, not strength. Even Sira's closest ally, Varric, a broad-shouldered Azurian with a scar bisecting his brow, watched him with naked distrust, hand never straying far from his sword. Determined to prove his worth, Marcus turned to what he knew best. He spent long hours with the clan's healers, observing the sick children, their skin mottled, eyes fever-bright. He asked questions, took samples, and spent nights in the outpost's lab, analyzing the water that fed the enclave. Under the microscope, he saw the writhing coils of a toxic microbe, native, but flourishing in the stagnant cisterns beneath the cliff. The next morning, Marcus gathered scavenged tech, broken filters, lengths of carbon mesh, a decommissioned purifier from the outpost. He worked in the open, sleeves rolled, sweat streaking his brow as he assembled the makeshift purifier. The clan watched, suspicious but curious. Varric hovered nearby, arms crossed, daring him to fail. By nightfall, clear water flowed from the spout. Within days, the children's fevers broke. Mothers wept quietly. Warriors regarded Marcus with something more complex than disdain, though their eyes still held wary distance. That night, Marcus and Sira ate together for the first time, without the weight of hostility pressing down. They sat on opposite sides of a low table, a meal of roasted root and dried fruit laid between them. The air was less charged, their words fewer, the silence companionable. Syrah's hair brushed her cheek as she reached for a slice of thorn fruit. Marcus's hand moved at the same moment, their fingers colliding. The contact was electric, a jolt that snapped both of their heads up, eyes locking. Neither withdrew. Syrah's lips parted, but before words could pass between them, chaos erupted outside, a guttural cry, then the clang of alarm bells, the unmistakable shriek of an Azurian cut short. Marcus sprang to his feet. "Stay here." Syrah ignored him, already halfway to the door, blades gleaming in her fists. They burst into the corridor. Smoke stung Marcus's lungs, the air alive with shouts and the hiss of plasma blades. In the courtyard, Azurian warriors clashed with dark, hulking shapes. Night Stalker scouts armored in chitin, eyes like burning coals. The creatures moved with a brutal animal grace, slashing down warriors as they broke through the perimeter. Varric charged into the melee, roaring, "Your weakness brought them, Offworlder! Dravik would have held the line." The clan teetered on the edge of rebellion, fear sharpening their voices, some backing away, others pressing forward with desperate fury. Marcus stepped between Varric and the clan, voice ringing out over the chaos. "We don't have time for blame. That was only a probe. The real attack is coming." Varric spat at his feet. "You command nothing here." Marcus ignored him, turning to Syrah. "We need your lieutenants, and the largest map you have." Syrah hesitated, eyes flicking to the dead and wounded, then back to Marcus. "You heard him," she barked at a nearby warrior. "Summon the council. Bring the war map." Within minutes, the warlord's chamber filled with Azurian warriors, faces bloodied, eyes wary. The ancient war map was unrolled across the table, its surface carved and inked with the scars of 100 battles. Marcus set his tablet beside it, projecting a luminous overlay, terrain scans, choke points, heat signatures flickering in ghostly blue. He drew lines with his finger. "The Night Stalkers will come through the low pass here, too narrow for a full assault. We can rig charges and nets, drive them into these choke points." He moved markers, voice measured and calm. "The cliffs funnel sound and scent. We'll set decoys, lure the lead packs away. Here," he pointed to a ravine, "we set fire traps, use their own fear against them." The warriors murmured, uncertain. The plan was alien, far from the brute force tactics they knew. Syrah stepped forward, voice ringing clear. "His mind sees what we cannot. We follow his lead. I'll command the front." Varric looked from Syrah to Marcus, jaw working. Finally, he gave a grudging nod. The clan pressed closer, their energy shifting from doubt to grim determination. Marcus met Syrah's eyes. In that charged moment, he saw not just an ally but a partner, one forged in fire and necessity. Respect pulsed between them, fragile but real. They bent over the map together, war council unfolding as the moon's shadow deepened, their alliance no longer a matter of fate, but of choice. As preparations began, the uneasy thread between them wove into something stronger, a promise for the battle ahead. The days before battle blurred together, each sunrise and sunset lost in a feverish rhythm of preparation. Tension, once sharp between Marcus and Syrah, became a different force, a shared purpose that drew them together. Their friction transformed into something urgent and electric. They worked side by side, rarely apart. In the cramped alcove that served as their laboratory, Marcus showed Syrah how to mix volatile compounds for the traps. He measured powders with careful precision, then placed the flask in her hands, his fingers lingering a beat too long on her knuckles. "Stir gently," he murmured. "If it fizzes, step back." She glared at him, but the corner of her mouth twitched. "I know how to handle danger, Offworlder." "Not all danger is the same," Marcus replied, his voice low, teasing. She finished the mixture, a faint smile breaking through her usual reserve. "You're not like the others." They moved through the clan's camp, checking the placement of nets and charges. Sira kept pace at his side, her presence fierce and unyielding. When they paused, she gestured for him to join her on the training ground. You survived Dravik, but that was luck and poison, she said, tossing him a practice blade. If you lead, you must fight like one of us. She corrected his grip, her hands enveloping his, body pressing close to align his stance. Her breath was warm against his ear as she spoke, each word a lesson and a promise. She moved behind him, guiding his arm in a swift arc. Her touch lingered, neither of them pretending it was merely instructional. Again, she commanded, voice husky. Marcus struck, clumsy at first, but she was patient. When he misstepped, she caught his wrist, her thigh bracing his. Their movements became a wordless conversation, every correction an excuse for contact. Sweat slicked their skin, heat rising between them. By night, the war chamber became their world. They hunched over maps, plotting the defense. Sira's pink hair trailed over Marcus's cheek as she leaned close to study a sketched ravine. Her scent, sharp, wild, a hint of earth and something purely Azurian, filled his senses. He stilled, breathing her in, heart racing. She looked up, lips barely a breath from his. You think too much, she whispered. He answered in Azurian, voice barely audible. You move too fast. A smile flickered, and for a moment the tension between them became unbearable. Their eyes met, longing crackling in the air. She leaned in, her hand finding his, fingers curling. The chamber door slammed open. Varric entered, armor splattered with oil, breaking the spell. Warlord, we need you. The traps on the eastern ridge are ready for your inspection. Sira drew back, mask slipping over her features. Marcus swallowed his frustration, nodding curtly. We're coming. Varric's gaze lingered, suspicion in his eyes, but he said nothing more. The eve of battle arrived, the moon bleeding copper over the cliffs. Marcus and Sira stood together atop the highest precipice, wind whipping their hair, the camp's torches flickering below. Silence stretched between them, heavy with what remained unsaid. Sira broke it first, voice raw. Tomorrow, they come. Marcus reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining. We'll be ready, he promised. She turned to him, her face exposed in the twilight. For the first time, the armor of command fell away. Dravik's cruelty. It was all I knew. It kept us alive, but it was a cage. I feared him, but more than that, I feared dying without ever knowing true partnership. Marcus's heart ached at the vulnerability in her voice. You're not alone anymore. She placed her palm flat over his chest, feeling the frantic beat of his heart. I have fought beside you. Your mind is a weapon, sharper than any blade. I do not want to die never knowing what it is to choose, not by law, not by blood, but by will. Desire and fear ignited in the space between them, twin fires feeding on uncertainty. He drew her close, their lips meeting in a fierce, desperate kiss, a collision of equals, not a surrender. Her arms wrapped around his neck, his hands sliding to her waist. She tasted of wind and salt, her kiss wild and hungry. They stumbled back, finding the bed in the warlord's quarters. Armor fell away, replaced by skin and sweat, need and longing. They made love in the dim, uncertain light, not as warlord and mate, but as two souls choosing each other against the coming dark. For a time, there was only the rhythm of their bodies, the heat and gasp of breath, the silken slide of skin. Sira's fingers tangled in Marcus's hair, his mouth tracing the line of her collarbone. She arched beneath him, fierce and vulnerable, her whispers a litany in the language of her people. After, they lay together, heartbeats slowing, the silence finally peaceful. Sira traced a scar along Marcus's ribs, her touch gentle. Do not die, off-worlder, he smiled, pressing his lips to her brow. Not if you don't. Dawn arrived on the wings of chaos. The first warning was the tremor in the earth, a distant rumble growing louder, punctuated by guttural roars. Marcus was up in an instant, donning his battered exosuit, checking the charge on his sonic emitter. Syrah was already at the door, blades strapped to her thighs, eyes blazing. "Stay above. Coordinate the traps. I'll hold the line." He nodded, swallowing the surge of fear. "Come back to me." Her gaze lingered, then she vanished into the whirlwind of warriors below. From his perch atop the cliffs, Marcus watched the Night Stalker horde pour from the wastes. Armored, many-legged, serpentine predators with plated heads and oozing black blood. They shrieked as they encountered the first line of defense, chitons scraping stone, claws flashing. Marcus spoke into his comm, relaying orders. "Now! Trigger the rock slide on the west approach!" A thunderous crash echoed as boulders tumbled, crushing half a dozen Night Stalkers. The creatures shrieked, forced into narrower channels where Syrah's warriors waited, nets and fire at the ready. Syrah was a blur, her blades flashing, limbs moving with lethal grace. Marcus's chest swelled with pride as he watched her cut through the enemy, her war cry ringing above the din. He scanned the field, marking clusters of enemies. "Spring the fire trap in the ravine. Syrah, fall back to the second line." The plan worked. Traps funneled the Night Stalkers, chaos decimating their numbers. But then a shadow moved where it should not. The Alpha, huge, plated, its mouth a nightmare of fangs, clawed its way up the cliff, ignoring the carnage below. Marcus felt the change in the air, a cold certainty. He drew the blade Syrah had given him, backing toward the edge of his perch. The Alpha lunged, slamming him against the rocks. Pain exploded in Marcus's ribs. He slashed at the creature's neck, remembering Syrah's lessons: strike beneath the armor, go for the soft joint. Dark blood spattered his face as he landed a hit, but the beast only roared, jaws snapping inches from his throat. Desperate, Marcus fumbled for his sonic emitter. The Alpha pinned him, claws digging into his shoulder. He pressed the device against the stone and triggered the pulse. A shriek tore through the air as the cliff ceiling trembled, then collapsed. The world dissolved in a rain of stone and dust. The Alpha vanished beneath the rubble, its roar muffled. Marcus lay stunned, blood seeping from his wounds, dust choking his lungs. He saw the sky through the falling grit, Syrah's face swimming in his mind. The roar of victory echoed, distant and fading, as darkness claimed him. Marcus woke to the slow, rhythmic sound of breathing and the scent of medicinal herbs. The world resolved into the familiar stone arch of the Warlord's quarters, the battered hide draped across the entry, the amber light of dawn spilling across the floor. His body ached in a dozen places, ribs bandaged, shoulders stitched and sore. Someone had tended his wounds with care. He turned his head. Syrah sat cross-legged nearby, cleaning her twin blades with methodical attention. The steel gleamed as she wiped away the last traces of Night Stalker blood. Her armor was gone, replaced by simple black cloth, and her pink hair was tied high, a few stray strands falling over her brow. She moved with calm confidence, her presence grounding him. Marcus stirred, pain blooming along his side. Syrah glanced up, her expression softening. "You should be sleeping," she said, voice gentle but firm. He tried a wry smile. "Wasn't sure I was still alive." She set the blades aside and leaned in, examining his bandages. "Alive, yes, stubborn as ever." She pressed her palm lightly to his brow, feeling for fever, then to his chest. Her touch was careful, intimate. "You lost much blood. You fought the Alpha like a fool." He caught her hand, holding it. "It was that, or let it eat me." Her lips quirked, amusement shining in her eyes. "Next time, let someone else be the bait." She shifted, pulling a bowl of broth from the embers and handing it to him. "Eat, heal." He drank, savoring the warmth and salt, the silence between them easy and companionable. Syrah remained by his side, sometimes tending to her weapons, sometimes dabbing cool water along his brow, always within reach. No longer was she a prize to be guarded, nor was he the warlord she had been forced to obey. They had fought as equals, survived as partners. Days passed in this gentle rhythm. Sira brought him news of the clan, the wounded healing, the Night Stalker corpses burned, the enclave secure. Varric and the other warriors gave Marcus wary respect, a few offering nods or cautious greetings when they passed. Children peered in from the doorway, shy and curious. Marcus found himself smiling more easily, the ache of old battles receding. One evening, as the last light faded from the cliffs, Marcus felt his strength return. He sat up, wincing as the bandages pulled. Sira looked up from her sharpening stone, eyebrows raised. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, standing for the first time since the battle. His legs shook, but he steadied himself. Sira rose, her movements fluid and ready to catch him if he faltered. Marcus took a deep breath. The law is satisfied. Dravik's death ended the old claim. You're not bound to me, not by tradition or by any right of conquest. He reached for the battered jacket, the one he had given her before the duel, its edges frayed, the symbol of her status as Warlord's mate. He held it out to her. You're free, Sira. If you want to leave or stay, it's your choice. Sira regarded the jacket for a long moment. Then slowly she smiled, a rare, dazzling expression that transformed her face. She pushed the jacket aside and stepped close, entwining her fingers with his. Her grip was strong, her skin cool and electric. The old law is gone, she said quietly. You never treated me as property. You are my warlord, not because I am given, but because I choose it. And I, by my will, am your mate. This is the new way. Marcus's heart pounded, relief and hope rising in his chest. He cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. Are you sure? Sira leaned in, her voice fierce and certain. I have fought beside you. I have bled for you and with you. There is no one else I would rather build a future with, not by law, but by love. Their kiss was deep, not desperate, but triumphant, a seal on their new world, born from blood and remade with respect. Marcus wrapped his arms around her, feeling the strength in her embrace, the certainty of their bond. Around them, the warlord's quarters seemed to breathe, the darkness giving way to something bright and unbreakable. Time spun forward. Seasons shifted on Veronas, the copper-stained moon blooming with new life. A year passed, and the Azurian enclave thrived in ways no one had dared imagine. Marcus's hydroponic gardens climbed the cliffs, glass tubes and green vines spilling over the terraces. The clan's children chased each other between rows of edible moss, laughter ringing through the air. The water was clean, the food plentiful, and for the first time in memory, no child went hungry. The outpost's old walls were covered in murals, blue-skinned hands, the coils of night stalkers, the flowering plants Marcus had coaxed from barren soil. Warriors trained in the courtyards, but their faces were lighter, their eyes bright with hope. Sira led them with confidence, her authority uncontested, her laughter often echoing above the din. Inside Marcus and Sira's home, chaos and order mingled. Maps unfurled across the walls, specimens in glass jars lined the shelves, and weapons hung as art, blades and bows, even Marcus's battered trowel. There were notes scrawled in 2 languages, scientific reports interspersed with Azurian poetry. Their bed was never neatly made, always rumpled from shared mornings and late-night conversations. One evening, as twilight settled and the air filled with the scent of blooming thorn fruit, Marcus bent over a mineral sample, muttering to himself. The stones sparkled in the lamplight, his brow furrowed in concentration. Sira returned from training, sweat gleaming on her twilight blue skin, hair tumbling loose down her back. She watched him for a moment, then crossed the room, sliding her arms around his shoulders from behind. Her touch was sure, fingers kneading the knots from his neck. "You and your minerals," she teased, pressing a kiss to the crown of his head. "Is this one going to save the world, or just clutter our shelves?" Marcus grinned, setting the rock aside. He turned, catching her hand and bringing it to his lips. "You never know. Someday, one of these will be worth more than all the war spoils on Veronis." Syrah rolled her eyes, but her smile was fond. "Someday, perhaps. For now, I'm content with this." She leaned into him, their foreheads touching, the room quiet except for the soft murmur of the hydroponics and the distant laughter of children. Their intimacy was no longer a secret or a rebellion. It was woven into the fabric of their lives, quiet, steady, seamless. In each other, they found what the old laws had denied. Not dominance, but partnership. Not conquest, but choice. And in that, they remade their world, one gentle moment at a time. Lieutenant Hale arrived just after midday, the sun burning pale and copper above the cliffs. The landing shuttle's engines thundered, scattering a flock of silver-winged birds from the edge of the hydroponic gardens. She stepped onto Azurian soil flanked by a delegation, scientists, negotiators, a medic with a heavy case of supplies. Their uniforms looked strange among the riot of wildflowers and woven banners that adorned the once bare clearing. The clan hall, once a fortress of fear, had become a council chamber. The old throne, Dravik's battered seat, had been replaced by a long table shaped from the bones of a giant cliff beast and polished to a mirror shine. Maps and blueprints were pinned to the walls, and sunlight filtered through stained glass, throwing shifting color across faces gathered there. Marcus sat at one end, Syrah beside him. They wore no symbols of rank, no armor. Their chairs were side by side, not above the others. Syrah's hand rested easily on the table, fingers entwined with Marcus's when no one was watching. The council had been summoned. Varek, stoic and broad-shouldered. 3 elders with faces lined by wisdom and laughter. Several younger warriors and clan mothers, their children peeking in from the doorway. Hale entered and stopped short, gaze sweeping the room. She blinked, visibly startled, as the Azurians rose not in hostility, but in welcome, posture straight, eyes bright, weapons sheathed. There was no trace of the sullen, wary tribe she remembered. "You've changed," she said, voice low, awe threading her words. Syrah nodded, lips curving in a faint, proud smile. "We have learned. There is strength in unity, and in listening." She gestured to an empty seat beside her. "Will you sit, Lieutenant?" Hale hesitated, then took her place. The delegation filed in after her, exchanging cautious glances with the Azurian Council. Negotiations began with little preamble. Marcus leaned forward, his voice clear but unhurried. "We're here to discuss trade, medical supplies, and shared defense. The mineral lodes beneath the cliffs run deep. In exchange for technology and medicines, we can offer guidance in extracting them safely." Syrah added, "Our warriors will share their training, discipline, survival, the ways of the cliffs. But there are lines we will not cross. We defend our home, but we do not conquer for others." A murmur of agreement rippled through the Azurian side of the table. The human negotiators, led by Hale, conferred quietly, recalibrating old assumptions. Hale met Syrah's eyes. "We thought your people would resist collaboration, that you'd see us as a threat." Syrah's gaze was steady. "Once, we would have, but respect breeds respect." She glanced at Marcus, then at Varek, who gave a small, firm nod. "We are not what you believed." Marcus steered the conversation to practicalities, projecting maps and resource lists from his datapad. "We have already improved crop yields and water filtration. With access to your medical nanites, we can treat injuries and disease more effectively. In return, we'll allow your teams to study the unique minerals here, under Azurian oversight." A scientist in Hale's party leaned forward, wonder in his voice. "Your children, are those new cultivars? Their skin is so clear, their energy." Syrah smiled, pride lighting her features. Our gardens feed us all now. Marcus's ideas, our labor. Varric folded his arms, expression grave but approving. We deal as equals. No more, no less. The negotiations moved swiftly, fairness guiding every exchange. When points of contention arose, Syrah spoke of honor and boundaries, Marcus of progress and future possibilities. There were moments of friction, debates over the placement of trade outposts, the extent of shared research, but each was met with careful listening and genuine compromise. When the final agreements were drafted, Syrah rose, extending her hand to Hale. May the alliance hold. Hale clasped her wrist, face open with admiration. You have my word, and my respect. As dusk settled, torches were lit and the council adjourned. Marcus found himself at the edge of the cliffs, the enclave spread below, its lights twinkling in the deepening blue. Hale joined him, silent for a moment, taking in the transformed landscape, gardens cascading over stone, laughter and music rising from the gathering spaces, warriors training not for war, but for mastery. Hale exhaled slowly, voice almost reverent. You changed everything, Marcus. I barely recognize this place, or its people. Marcus watched a group of children chase each other along the garden paths, their laughter a music that had never existed here before. He spoke softly, the truth simple and undeniable. Empathy is the greatest strength. It's what built all this. Not power, not fear. Hale shook her head, a small, incredulous smile on her lips. If only more leaders thought that way. He smiled in return, but his gaze was distant, fixed on the lights of the home he and Syrah had built together. That night, their home was quiet, save for the gentle hum of the hydroponic pumps and the wind whispering at the stone. Marcus stood by the window, studying the stars, points of silver fire scattered across the black. His mind wandered, tracing old paths. The boy who had left Earth for adventure, the scientist who had become a warlord by necessity, the man who had discovered the limits and the power of his own heart. He barely heard Syrah enter, but he felt her presence as she slid her arms around his waist from behind. She pressed her cheek to his back, holding him close. Lost in thought again? She murmured, her voice soft with affection. Marcus turned in her embrace, cupping her face in his hands. The years of struggle and survival were written in the faint lines at the corners of her eyes, in the strength of her jaw, in the wild, beautiful light that never left her gaze. She smiled, tracing a finger along his jaw. You fought with mind and heart. The old law was meant to crush the weak, to keep us caged in fear. But you, her voice faltered, then steadied. You earned my spirit. Marcus kissed her, slow and deep. It was not the frantic, desperate kiss of new love or the bruising touch of survival, but a silent conversation, of respect, shared struggle, and a love that had become both fierce and gentle, their bodies pressed together, warmth and trust anchoring them. Outside, the enclave pulsed with life, but within these walls, they were simply two souls who had remade their world, together. In the peace after victory, Marcus and Syrah found a new rhythm. The days unfolded with a quiet steadiness, as if the moon itself had begun to breathe easier. The enclave flourished, green spilling down the cliff faces, in terraces of moss and thorn fruit, the laughter of children echoing in the canyons. No longer was the air thick with dread or the tension of survival. Now, it was filled with the warmth of a people rebuilding. Marcus became the architect, moving through the village with a rolled map in one hand and a stylus behind his ear. He consulted with engineers and gardeners, translating ideas into realities, water channels cut through stone, solar collectors gleaming on the heights, new dwellings shaped from woven vine and reinforced hide. The children raced alongside him, sometimes helping, sometimes simply following, curious and bold. Syrah was the shield. She trained the young warriors at dawn, her form a blur of grace and strength beneath the rising sun. Her voice rang clear across the training ground, encouraging, challenging, never cruel. She led patrols along the borders, her presence a quiet reassurance. When disputes rose among the clan, it was Sira who listened first, and Marcus who found the solution. Their authority was seamless, their bond obvious to all. Not a conqueror and captive, but partners in every sense. Their home was a sanctuary above the main hall, filled with odd harmony. Marcus's charts and instruments occupied one wall, a mosaic of mineral samples and sketched designs. Sira's blades hung nearby, polished and lovingly arranged, each one a story. The air inside was scented with dried herbs, leather, and a hint of ozone from Marcus's tools. Their clothes mingled, his worn jackets, her armored vests, on pegs by the door. Most evenings, Sira returned from sparring, sweat shining on her twilight skin. She would find Marcus bent over his maps, tongue caught between his teeth, intent on some new scheme. She'd lean in the doorway, arms folded. "If you stare at those charts any harder, you'll burn holes through them." Marcus looked up, feigning indignation. "You say that, but last week you asked me to map the entire northern ridge for new patrol routes." She crossed the room in 2 strides, tugged him upright by his collar, and kissed him, quick and certain, grounding him in the now. "That was for strategy. This is for sanity." He laughed, looping his arms around her waist. "You're my reality check." "Someone has to be," she teased, brushing her nose against his. "Otherwise, you'd forget to eat." Sometimes, when she was gone, Marcus would find one of her knives tucked beside his desk or a braid of her hair tied around a mug. Small, wordless reminders. She was there, even in her absence. Their love was woven into daily life, threaded through each moment, hands finding each other as they walked the market stalls, eyes meeting across the council table, a touch on the shoulder in passing. The Enclave had learned to read these gestures, the gentle intimacy of equals. There was no fear now in the way Sira laughed, no tension in the way Marcus stood tall beside her. They belonged, not only to each other, but to the people they led. The clan's respect was unmistakable. Warriors inclined their heads when Sira passed. Children clung to Marcus's arms and demanded stories of Earth and the stars. In gatherings, the council deferred not to one, but both, questions and concerns addressed to them as a unit. One afternoon, as a celebration for a new well filled the air with music and firelight, Varric approached Marcus, clapping a broad hand on his shoulder. "We have not forgotten what you did, off-worlder, but it is good to see you smile." His gaze flicked to Sira, standing a few paces away, eyes bright as she taught a group of girls to weave thornfruit baskets. "She chose you, and you, her. That is the way." Marcus nodded, warmth spreading through his chest. "It's the only way that lasts." As dusk bled copper and gold across the sky, Marcus and Sira found themselves alone atop the cliffs. Below, the lights of the Enclave blinked on, scattered among the gardens and homes. The air was cool, tinged with the scent of flowering moss. Sira stood at the edge, arms folded, watching the last rays sink beneath the horizon. Marcus came up behind her, slipping his hand into hers. She squeezed his fingers, then turned, a slow smile curving her lips. "You look serious, Professor." "I'm thinking," he said, voice soft, "about how far we've come." She pressed her forehead to his, her breath warm on his cheek. "You're always thinking," he grinned. "Someone has to keep up with you." She laughed, the sound low and genuine, then nudged him back a step. "Show me your strength, Warlord." He lifted her easily, her laughter ringing as he carried her to their sleeping platform. The woven hides and furs welcomed them, soft beneath the sweep of their bodies. This time, there was no urgency, no desperation or fear. Only joy, a fusion of Azurian strength and human ingenuity. limbs tangled beneath the copper sky. They made love with the windows thrown wide, the air cool on their skin, the sound of their hearts louder than any war drums. Afterwards they lay together, Syrah's head tucked into the hollow of Marcus's shoulder, their hands joined between them. She traced circles on his chest, her voice a whisper. I never believed I could have this. Not with the old law. He kissed her temple, fingers in her hair. The old law was built on fear. We made something better. She met his eyes, and in the luminous depths, he saw everything. The battles and the laughter, the pain and the hope. We did, and I am glad. Their union was no longer an act of survival, but a celebration, a testament to the future they had forged. The old ways had been harsh, but together they had built something stronger. Each day was a choice, a promise renewed with every touch, every glance, every laugh shared in the quiet sanctuary of their home. Marcus gazed at Syrah, the lines of her face familiar as his own thoughts. He had traveled across the stars in search of meaning, of adventure, of discovery. But in her arms, surrounded by the world they had remade together, he finally understood what it meant to belong. Not to a planet or a law, but to a person, fierce and gentle, wild and wise. In the luminous depths of Syrah's eyes, Marcus found his true home, not among the stars, but here, in the world they had shaped, side by side. Our story ends here. Make sure you subscribe, press the like button, and tell us in the comments what stood out to you the most in this video. Your feedback means a lot to our team. You'll discover many more captivating stories on our channel. See you in the next one.